Welcome to Africa Speaks. I'm your host, Pamela Anjang. Today's conversation will be with the extraordinary and champion of leadership, Mr. Ari Obenson, Chief Executive Director and partner of Transformunity, a consulting firm that harnesses opportunities of corporations and organizations to transform the world. Prior to his current position, Obenson served as Junior Chamber International Secretary General. He occupied various positions in JCI for a 17-year period, including Director for Africa and the Middle East, Executive Director and Deputy Secretary General. Obenson is a barrister of law and is currently a member of the Cameroon Bar Association. So stay tuned and learn a thing or two about leadership and what brought him to the United Nations General Assembly this year. So good to have you on Africa Speaks, Arrey, Mr. Obenson.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
You know, I was reading about you and your thing is leadership. But before we go into that, Africa is in so much need of leadership, great leadership. We are so successful at a lot of things, but I think we seem to have a crisis of leadership. So first of all, tell me where you're from and a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Ari Obenson and I'm from Cameroon. Cameroon lies between Central and West Africa. Beautiful country, bilingual country, rich in resources, both natural and particularly human resources. I started out in Cameroon practicing in a small city called Limbe, practicing law. And whilst I was doing my legal practice, I had the opportunity to find an organization that gave me a different perspective on life. And this organization was called Junior Chamber International, as we later on wanted it to be known as JCI. Through this organization, which I became a founder member in Limbe, we started doing projects for our hospital in Limbe. And when I was local president, we decided to visit the hospital in Limbe. And during that visit, we asked the director of the hospital what exactly we could do to help work in our community. How could we help the hospital? So the doctor took me to visit the hospital. And we visited the wards of the hospital. And we found out that of the 14 wards that were in the hospital, none of them had functioning toilets.
No kidding.
Not one.
No kidding.
We go back to the executive director's office.
Yeah.
He opens the door, opens the toilet in his office, and that's the only one that is working. He asked me this question: who is the patient? Is it me, the doctor, or those people? This is a hospital that's supposed to provide services to patients, and the only functioning toilet is this. For me, that was a life-changing moment, because as I left that office, 26 years old, I couldn't even afford a meal for myself that day, but I knew that there was something I had to do about it. And so I went back to my local organization and I told my board members that we're going to do something about this. And so we did. There was a trade show in the city, and we decided to rent a booth in the trade show.
Right.
And in that booth, we put pictures of the hospital to demonstrate to the community the state of the hospital. A hospital that accepted 150,000 patients each year. We don't know how many children had died from infections, or mothers who went to have children had died from infection. Long story short, we were able to mobilize resources in the community to build 9 of those toilets. And when we did that, Sonara joined us and did some. CDC joined us and did some. We provided a new hospital, essentially, for the people of Limbe. That is my philosophy about leadership. That leadership is anybody taking initiative to make a difference, to challenge the status quo.
That is so awesome. You know, I did not know that you're a founding member of JCI. That is when you spent 17 years with
Yeah,
JCI. So
yeah.
how did you go from there, come to the United States, and what have you been doing, or what did you do in those 17 years out here?
Yeah, I'm founding, so the organization internationally is 100 years old, but I was founding member of the one in Limbe, in Cameroon. Once we did that project,
Yes.
I knew that many more young people needed to have exposure to initiatives like that.
Right.
So, like I said, I was a lawyer and I was practicing law and I was doing cases for an advertising company called Media Plus.
Right.
So what I decided to do was, I used to negotiate contracts with cities to manage advertisement space. So everywhere I went to negotiate a contract, once you negotiate a contract, you have to set up an office there to manage the space. So I started identifying young people to work in those offices, and those young people, I made them JCI members. And through that, we were able to create JCI in Moyoka, in Boya, in Kumba. We went on to create it in Edea, in Bafoussam, in Bamenda. So within a space of 2 years, we expanded. We created 9 new local organizations or chapters. So, and I'm sitting in my office one day and the phone rings and it's JCI World Headquarters. We grew our membership in Cameroon from 65 to 500 in a matter of 18 months.
From your initiative?
Yeah. So my phone rings and it's JCI World Headquarters because they had heard about this incredible work that we've done growing the organization almost 400%. So they asked me whether I would like to do this for Africa because Africa needed to grow. So I said I'll think about it. But I was putting aside my legal practice to go and do this. And the gentleman on the phone called Desmond Alofo, he kind of said, well, you know, you can come here, do this for 3 years and you can go back, but we want you to repeat what you did in Cameroon.
Yes.
So I was coming over to the United States with a goal of doing this for 3 years, and then after that I'll go back to Cameroon and continue my legal practice, and here I am 17 years later. But when I walked into JCI World Headquarters, the first thing I realized was that this organization was bigger than even the people who were in the organization could imagine. So what I decided to do was actively engage young people across the African continent because no continent needed an organization like this than Africa. So when I started out in JCI, Africa was 2% of our overall membership in the organization. We had 6,500 members and we were present in 14 countries. Within 5 years, we had grown from 6,500 to 14,000 members. We had gone from 14 countries to 31 countries. We had expanded Africa from just Africa to Africa and the Middle East. And
this is just unbelievable.
And then another call came again.
This is unbelievable to think about how this started for you.
Yes.
And the transformation that you were able to accomplish. That's what I'm just in awe of you.
And here's the key of what I did. So many times people focus a lot on what people benefit.
Right.
And I know that that's not that is what has brought Africa down. Is that everybody has thought about their survival. We have been wired to think that our survival depends on us taking resources from others.
Where do you think that comes from?
I think there is a colonial hangover to it. There is a colonial hangover to it because colonialism really created a society that was layered, where you had the masters and then you had the servants.
Yes, and so.
And then you had the laborers.
Yes.
That was the colonial hangover, which is distinct from our cultural structure. In our cultural structure, people had defined roles that they played within society. So I focused instead a lot on telling young people what they can do for their community, and in that process, they discover the better side of them.
Yes.
So for example, if I didn't get involved in that hospital project, this side of me, but this leadership side of me, I would never have discovered it. I would have been going to the law courts like every other lawyer and not contributing as much as I had the potential to contribute to my society.
Let me chime in a little bit. Do you know how many people have been to that hospital and not done anything about it? What is the mindset of someone, a young man like you at the time in your 20s, to go and see a situation and see opportunity to help, to be of service? What do you want to tell our young Africans about stepping up?
Yeah. I think youthful exuberance is something that that is underrated.
Yeah.
Because when you are young, you can imagine things that you can do.
Right.
You may not necessarily see the path, but you're not worried too much about the risk that
Correct.
you take.
Yeah.
The older you get, the more risk averse you become.
The more skeptical.
Yes, the more skeptical. And the biggest transformation in human history has always come from young people.
That's true.
And so if as long as young people are given the opportunity to participate, then they can, that's where they discover the other side of them, to be engaged, to be involved. The challenge in most cases is that if you're only seeing the obstacles, you are stuck with the obstacles.
Yes, it paralyzes you.
It does. One of the biggest philosophies that I've had, and for the time that I was at JCI, I use that philosophy and it works, is that individuals, organizations or corporations that focus on their challenges, and I'll throw in countries too, are defined by their challenges. Whilst individuals, organizations, corporations, and countries that focus on their opportunities are defined by their opportunities.
No kidding, you're what you think.
Absolutely. Absolutely, because think about it. If you are only thinking about your problems, then you spend all your energy trying to solve those
Feeding
problems
them
without focusing on the, where else do you go?
Yes.
So, for example, at JCI, I use this example all the time. When I became Deputy Secretary General, I was running the organization and working on developing new strategies. But every time I talk to people, they'll say, well, we don't have a budget. And I said,
Never
okay,
a budget.
We will always be short of our budget. So what do we have and what can we do with it? We developed 20 times more videos, marketing material with the same budget. And at the end of the year, asked them, how did we do it? And the answer was that we started thinking differently. We started focusing on our opportunities.
So focus on the opportunity.
You focus on the opportunities, you will find out that you can do a lot more.
That's just a very key lesson. Now, so what made you leave JCI? Because now you started, now you are Transformunity.
Yeah.
Okay, what made you leave JCI doing all these amazing things? And what is Transformunity about?
Okay. So this is not the end of the story with JCI.
Okay, let's
let me just tell you what.
Yes.
So after growing the organization in Africa, then I had
Middle East and all these places.
People ask me, why can you not do this for the world?
Okay.
So I recall that I went in to see the Secretary General, who had come and asked me whether I could become the Executive Director to develop growth strategy around the world. And I said to him that if we have to do this, we have to start from scratch.
I see.
Yeah. So what we did is we started by building a new strategic plan for the organization, changing the mission, the vision of the organization, and almost taking a 100-year-old organization and springing it forward into the new century.
Okay.
And we were transformational. We moved the organization from just focusing internally on its membership and benefits to those members to how the organization could be relevant in the world.
Okay.
Because when an organization becomes relevant, then people care about the organization. The organization cannot die. I also said, I'm not here to just build membership, but I'm here to build a movement. What does that mean? The mission of the organization is to empower young people to create positive change, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Not to empower members to create positive change.
Young people.
So we started to reach, instead of just our 200,000 members, to reach 1 million young people and touch the lives of 1 million young people. And so almost everywhere I go, the other day I was here in New York, I went to this award ceremony and I met a lady from Kenya that was not a JCI member, but had interacted with JCI and attended one of our youth development summits, an African Youth Development Summit. And here she won an award, here, a Global Citizen Award. And all over the world, you have people like that who are now making the world a better place as a result of their engagement with the organization. So we change the dynamics of the organization. But the work that has to be done for the world is much more than one organization can.
Right.
You know, and I think I got to a place where I believe there is a higher calling. I don't know what the higher calling is, but
you know what?
But
you're quite the optimist, so I can only imagine what the higher calling is.
I don't know what the higher calling is, but
Yes.
when you are developing an organization, you get to a point where you grow even more than the limits of the organization. Within JCI, I was always confined to this organization, even though but every day I saw that the opportunity was much more than the organization.
So what is Transformunity?
This turns around the philosophy I just mentioned to you.
Yes.
I'm currently writing a book which is called Bridging the Opportunity Gap.
Okay.
And it turns around that philosophy. And when I left JCI, a good number of my colleagues came to me and saying, you have to do something. You can't just leave like that. But I was going to take some time off and focus on this book. But then my phone never stopped ringing with all the partners, with all the organizations that we work with. Everybody's saying we have to continue working with you. And so in a brainstorm, my colleague said to me that you've always told us that if we focus on the opportunity, we can make a difference. So why don't we focus on the opportunity? Opportunities that will transform the world. Opportunities that will transform communities. Opportunities that will transform individuals. So Transformunity is a play of transform and opportunity.
Yeah, transform and opportunity.
Yeah.
You know what? That is so fitting. So what brings you to the United Nations?
Yes, you would think.
In light of this.
You ask, okay, I'm not here representing my organization. I believe that the Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, the world may look in the eyes of the ordinary person as very divided, but we are united in our challenges. We're also united in the opportunities and, in that sense, the solutions. We don't need to reinvent the wheel.
No.
These are 17 goals that we see as goals that will change the world, that will transform the world, that will eradicate poverty, that would reduce inequalities, and that will fight climate change. So those goals are there. And it used to be that the United Nations was for governments. And only governments came here. If you came here 10 years ago, you'll see only government. But more and more, we started seeing the civil society, NGOs getting involved, and businesses, you know. So now it has really become the United Nations, where the people, not just governments, the people are present. So anybody who wants to be part of solving the world's biggest problems has to be part of this conversation, has to be present.
I think they all just pick one of those sustainable goals and focus on maybe.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. But the mission has to continue from here to the remote parts of the world.
Absolutely.
So that people can see that they too have a responsibility in finding solutions to the challenges of the world. This has to continue in boardrooms of corporations, that corporations have a responsibility. Civil society organizations have a responsibility, and we, the people, have to hold our governments responsible or accountable for the commitments that they made here at the United Nations. So I'm here because Transformunity as a corporation, we want to help organizations, individuals, organizations, or corporations focus on closing what we call the opportunity gap.
Okay.
So a corporation is wondering how they can use the Sustainable Development Goals to grow as an organization. We will show them how.
Oh.
An individual, say an athlete, is in doubt about whether they can win the next Olympic medal. We want to be able to make them see the opportunity and coach them to be able to do this. An organization has a brilliant idea. They want to build a movement around it. We will be able to help them. It's all we have done in the past 17 years.
So what would be an example of a situation how you guys would, how Transformunity would intervene to create, to facilitate that success?
So here, I'm going to give you an example of what's actually going on now. We have an organization that's based out of South Africa, right? And this organization, most of the time in the world, we hear organizations, brilliant ideas from the north coming to the south.
Okay.
And now we want to do something that is different. We've started, this organization has started an idea. I don't just want to put it in the air now, but it's coming.
It's coming.
But it's an idea from the south. That is a brilliant idea. And we want to take that idea global.
Okay.
And me and my team are working to take that idea global. So we're developing a strategic plan.
Okay.
Once we develop the plan, we're going to build an infrastructure around it. So once you have a plan, you determine who you need.
Yes.
We'll build that infrastructure, and then we'll build a movement around it.
Yes.
So it's a long-term game, and we're going to be serving as consultants for this campaign. But our goal is to take the campaign from South Africa to 100 countries in the next 12 months.
That's awesome. You know, you've used that word movement a couple of times, and I believe in that word. What's the difference between building a movement versus just building a project?
Yeah. So, movements is really what I've ended up doing in my life. You may know that I started something called I Am Cameroon.
Yes.
And with I Am Cameroon, which kind of put me in trouble with the government of Cameroon. But it made me see things that I never imagined to see. Yeah. We have been able to mobilize and engage 15,000 young people in Cameroon. And it's a very simple premise that we put the responsibility for the development of the country into the hands of these young people. And the way that you do it is identifying leaders within communities, working with those leaders to make them see a bigger picture.
Right.
And once they embrace the philosophy, they become the catalyst in communities. And all you do is give people small tasks. So when you give people small tasks and they achieve it, they want to do something bigger than the smaller task. And gradually you build a movement. We've also done so with a movement now that is already in 23 countries around Africa called the I'm Africa campaign. Last December, in the sidelines of the Global Citizen Festival, we trained 170 young people that have exploded on the continent now. And it's not only in Africa that we're doing this. You know, we started a campaign in Europe, which is called Step Up for Europe, where we mobilize people to register for the last European campaign. We probably saved Europe from falling apart, you know. I
mean, when you think about the fact that the world we're getting smaller in terms of connectivity, there's no reason why we shouldn't be, you know, building a movement, a global movement. Yeah. And that's exactly what you're doing. You know, I think about the word movement, and I feel like if you build a movement, it's more sustainable because people want to be a part of something as opposed to you building your thing. Yeah. And that's something that I want us to talk a little bit about, because there's a mindset that sometimes we have. And I know that you see opportunity always where there's challenge. But there's that mindset. I think mindset matters. As someone of African descent, would you say that being more inclusive, having a collective thinking is a better way? Because if you want to build a hospital, which we're all trying to build hospitals and clinics and even entertainment structures in Africa, do you think we need to shift from trying to get that personal acknowledgement versus the collective, you know, as a leader, in terms of leader? Because some people think that they do it that way, then they lose the focus that it's their invention or something.
I cannot agree with you more. We Africans have failed in being able to work together because of that mindset. What is holding us back is really the mindset. So I started this I Am Cameroon thing. I even forgot that I started something in Senegal called Manmae Senegal, which was basically the same thing in Wolof. But the reason I started it was because I've traveled extensively across Africa. Yeah. I've seen a lot of aid go to Africa. I've been part of many projects. I've led the Nothing But Nets fight against malaria, distribute 8 million mosquito nets in Cameroon, and we couldn't reduce the incidence of malaria because of mindset. So it is not the amount of resources that you give people. If people are not part of the solution, if people cannot condition themselves to see that the reason we put street lights is for their own safety and they must protect it, then if you put street lights, they will steal the bulb.
They'll steal the bulbs.
Because they don't see themselves.
That is for themselves. It's to protect you.
Yes. So we have to change the mindset. How do we change the mindset is really the big obstacle that we have in front of us. Yeah. But if you're only focused on that obstacle, then you're not going to start. So we may not solve the problem of changing Africans' mindset today. Yes. But we must start. It may be in my lifetime it's not going to happen, but we have to start by the number of people.
Maybe one child at a time.
One child at a time. I'll use a very simple example of what I experienced in Cameroon after going several times. I used to go to Cameroon and pay from my own pocket the meeting rooms for this I Am Cameroon meetings and all of that. I would give people money to do things. I would never see change. But once I went to Cameroon and they said, no, you don't have to pay for the meeting room. And I was like, what? And then I think I gave somebody money to pay some journalists who had come. And in giving them the money, I gave them 50,000 instead of 25,000 CFA. Yeah. 2 days later, this kid came and gave me 25,000 back. He said, you gave me more money than I need. I was flabbergasted, but that's a little win that I want to hang on to, because that's how change happens. That's a big deal. That is how change happens. It's one person at a time. And this is one that I experienced. There are probably many that I haven't experienced who are making a difference somewhere. So that's the thing. We have to change the mindset of Africans, and it cannot necessarily start with the older generation. Maybe they've crossed that threshold. Yes. So we have to start with the younger generation. We have the tools nowadays where we could be inspirational. We can be. Think about it. When you listen to Africans, I go to Nigeria, I go to all of this place, you know the people they celebrate?
No.
They celebrate the people who have stolen money from their government. You see that, man? Oh, this governor, oh, wow. His lifestyle, that's what they celebrate.
Because we celebrate material things.
Yes, that's what they celebrate. Yes. Every one person they're talking of, nobody is talking about, you see that school teacher? Yeah. After school, he teaches this number of, that's not important, but that's the greatest value in society is that school teacher who gave you the qualities that you have, who gave me the qualities that I have. It's the school teacher, but that's important. So we have to change the narrative and give the examples to the young people of Africa, of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And it is that motivation that's going to change their minds.
Do we need to recondition or reframe success? Because if we worship someone who's stolen money from the government, because someone drives a big car, or someone lives in a mansion, and we don't care about how they, achieve these things or, manage to acquire all the material things. And we're not against material things, but I think your emphasis is more on values.
Yes, yes. The core of it is values at the end of the day. And you know that African values.
Our original,
Our,
authentic
African
values.
values is that I am because you are.
That's
that
true.
we are here for one another.
I mean, the saying that it takes a village.
To bring up that's the core of
We need
the
to go
African
back.
value. But somehow we have had this exposure
To
This is-
capitalism.
to capitalism, and I say that the notion of the tribe is in conflict with the notion of the state. The notion of the state encourages individualism, encourages the politician to want to win to the detriment of the state.
Yeah.
The notion of the tribe is that the tribe wins.
collective.
We do this collectively.
Yes.
And I think that that's something that we have to revisit as we begin to try to rebuild African countries.
Maybe you ought to start the African tribe.
Yeah, but
Stop putting in the minds.
currently, if we look at the Cameroon where I come from and the challenges that the country is facing, one of the things that I try to explain to people is that if we want to solve our challenges, we don't have to think about it in the context of what has been obtained in the past or in the context of what has been written in the history books.
Yes.
We don't have to think about the form of the state from the way that it has always been, but maybe we can think about it from the way that we can coexist, which could be different. And I don't know what that is, but we have to start thinking differently.
Let's talk about the diaspora.
Yes.
How can the African diaspora, when I say diaspora, I'm not talking people only from continental Africa. I'm talking about the Caribbeans, I'm talking about Europe, wherever people of African descent are, including our African American brothers and sisters. How can the diaspora be a remedy to some of the challenges that we as people of African descent face? You think we have a responsibility?
Absolutely. There's a huge gap that has to be closed. Here's how the gap will be closed. And don't think that I'm crazy, but I think
know you're not
the
crazy.
gap can be closed. I have traveled to the Caribbean. I've spent a lot of time. I've been trying to engage the diaspora here. I believe, and I listen to them carefully, that it is time for us to stop talking about the past. It is time for us to paint a picture of what the future is. I spent my morning today talking about how we mobilize the diaspora because there's going to be a massive festival, Global Citizen Festival in Nigeria on the 26th of September next year. And we're thinking, how can we use this as Africa's moment? The World Cup was Africa's moment, but I think that we didn't capitalize on it. But if we're bringing the world to Africa, how can we also bring Africa's diaspora to Africa? We cannot bring it by telling them what is wrong with Africa. We cannot bring it to them by painting to them the picture of dilapidated hospitals and classrooms and corruption and all of that. We have to tell them that 10 years from now, here's what we want. And if we can change that conversation, in fact, I'm taking this like a challenge now.
Yes.
We have to change that conversation and paint a different picture of the Africa that is today to the Africa that we want, that we can see 10 years from now. This generation, Africa's youthful generation, you do not only have rights, you now have responsibilities. What is your responsibility? You may think you are small. You may think you come from a remote part of Africa, you come from a country where you cannot do anything. But change and responsibility begins with the very small things in very small communities. So begin with what you can do, but do something. Accept and assume your responsibility. Be Africa. Build the Africa that you want. Because nobody will. And for every step that you take, for every initiative that you take, what you gain, what you learn, there is no monetary value. It's priceless. So embrace the future. It's all yours.
You know what? I was going to ask more questions, but you have captured it so well, summarized it so well, that I want us to end on that note. Wonderful. So that it sinks.
Yes, thank you.
You be the change that you seek, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you so much for stopping.
Thank you very much.
Africa Speaks,
and good luck with Africa Speaks. I'd like to see this program go.
We're trying to be the change that we seek.
Absolutely.
Right?
This is a brilliant
I think we need to come to Transformunity School.
Yeah. I will come back. I hope I will get the chance to come back.
You better believe it.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank
What
you.
a beautiful, beautiful statement, and great ideas of leadership. Continue doing the good work, and I hope that someday the world will be not just Africa, but a global citizenship.
Absolutely.
Where we all collectively love one another.
Absolutely.
Right.
That's the goal.
Absolutely.